Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones closest to home. In A Tissue of Lies, Mike Nemeth takes us back to the turbulent summer of 1965, where a 14-year-old boy named Eddie Kovacs believes he's destined for the priesthood, until the secrets in his own family start to unravel everything he thinks is right and wrong. With a father haunted by the mills, a mother fighting shadows no one will name, and a town built on silence, Eddie is forced to confront adulthood long before he's ready. This is a coming-of-age story steeped in mystery, faith, and betrayal. A reminder that growing up can sometimes mean choosing between truth and survival. A Tissue of Lies by Mike Nemeth. A powerful novel of conscience, courage, and the cost of uncovering what was never meant to be found.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth-Brown, host of Down Under Interviews, History Bards, and Meet the Author over in the US. And we're here with a very amazing author, Mike Nemeth, who's just released his book, Tissue of Lies. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hello, Paul. Hello, everyone who's listening, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so Mike's novel is a gripping, emotionally layered story. His latest novel follows 14-year-old Eddie Kovacs, a boy preparing for the priesthood, whose world is upended by family secrets, moral conflict, and a truth that challenges everything he believes. Now, Mike, alcoholism, pedophilia, some other strange sort of like, I think, skimming and that type of thing. Is there anything else in there?
Yeah, actually there is. I mean, there's a lot of moral quandaries here for both parents, for Eddie and his older brother, Danny. They're all ordinary people who are suddenly faced with questions they hadn't anticipated they would have to deal with. And so the story is really about how do we make those moral choices, and when can we make choices that are outside our normal morality for something that we think might be a greater good.
So it's a coming of age story, right, about Eddie. Okay. And, all those sort of like things happening with his family and that type of thing. His mother's an alcoholic. His father's skimming money from off the accounts. What made you bring all those types of things into the story?
I actually wrote the book because I became rather annoyed with our younger generations, I won't name them, who really have the impression that growing up in today's world is somehow more difficult than it's ever been before. And I would challenge that as a baby boomer growing up in the 1960s when we had race riots, we had political assassinations. We were living under the cloud of nuclear annihilation because the Cold War was real at the time. And then there was the Vietnam War, which absolutely upended everything to do with society for a period of about 9 years. For 9 years, there was nothing else in America that mattered more. And we had a compulsory draft, which plays a huge role in the story. And just one other element I'm not going to say too much about, but comes into play here is in America at the time, homosexuality was actually illegal in over 30 states. And it actually comes to play in the story in a minor sort of role, but it has great consequences.
Okay, so with all those things wrapped in the story, who's going to read it? Who should read it?
I think of the book sort of like The Catcher in the Rye, in that it's a coming of age story, but it's actually intended for adults. My granddaughter has read the book and liked it. She's a high schooler. So it can, in fact, enrich the lives of young adults and maybe open their eyes a little bit to what their grandparents and parents have gone through. But it's actually intended for adults. It's a pretty serious story. I have actually had some reactions from people saying, just like you were about to say, oh my gosh, there's alcoholism, there's theft, there's deception, there are buried secrets. There's a lot of stuff in here that could trigger people.
Yeah. Okay, so the protagonist Eddie, as you mentioned, it's in the time of the Vietnam War. So Eddie's only 14 years old. He's trying to navigate this world. How did you tap into the voice of Eddie with so much honesty?
I don't have a perfect answer to the question. I've been told that it comes across well, as though it is a 14. He turns 15, has a birthday during the story, and it comes across well. I mean, I tried to remember what it felt like to me to be 15 years old, and trying to figure out what was really going on in my family, because at the time I grew up with second generation Americans as parents. And so they still had the old world. We don't give away our secrets. We never talk about what goes on when the doors of our house are closed. Every family was its own little secret, closed up unit, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you can remember back that far, because I can't.
Two women shaped his life, a mother who refused to break, and a wife who met every storm with courage. Their stories lived in the shadows until he finally stepped forward to tell them. A Letter Unwritten is the journey of a son looking back at sacrifice, at survival, at the quiet heroism of women the world rarely notices, but families never forget. From the trauma that marked his childhood to the fear of becoming the man he swore he'd never be, this is a story of confronting the past and finding the strength to choose a different path. Through his mother Jo's resilience and Bonnie's enduring love, Randy discovers that even the hardest stories can lead to healing, if someone is brave enough to speak them. A Letter Unwritten, the memoir that honours two extraordinary women and the son changed forever by their courage.
Okay, so
well, don't ask me what I did yesterday, okay?
Yeah. So the novel's set in 1965. How important was this historical backdrop to this journey of your protagonist, Eddie?
Well, I thought extremely, because the angst that young people feel today, we certainly felt at the time. The Vietnam War was the living room war. We had embedded news people with all of the units fighting in Vietnam. We saw casualties, we saw attacks, we saw firefights on television. And if you were of an age, which Eddie's older brother Danny is, of an age where you could be drafted and you were watching these things on the evening news, Walter Cronkite every evening telling you, how many of us died that day. The anxiety level was just enormous. It was huge. It was all anybody thought of. Basically, how do I survive? How do I either get out of this or find a way where I don't have to go through 10,000 miles away to die?
Yeah. So did you actually go to Vietnam?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. That's a long, funny story that I will keep shorter. But I actually, I'll just say finagled my way. I was in the Army, finagled my way into an assignment in Thailand, which is 2 countries to the west of Vietnam. Well, it turned out I was stationed on an Air Force base where the pilots flew every morning to North Vietnam to drop bombs. I've never met more courageous people, because only half of them would ever come back. But my job was to actually supply units that were in Vietnam. And so I ended up having to travel in and out of the country.
I mean, that sounds like a story in itself, a book in itself.
A Tissue of Lies actually has a sequel, which was published first, called The Two Lives of Eddie Kovacs. And in that novel, there's a good bit of that story.
Okay. Wonderful. So Frank, Eddie's father's a complicated man by the sounds of it, proud, flawed, and domineering of his two sons. What inspired his character, and how central is he to Eddie's life and the crises that he goes through?
Basically, Eddie is growing up with two competing forces trying to build his character and personality, and one is his father, and the other is the Catholic Church. And frankly, Eddie isn't sure he can trust either one of them, to be truthful. So Frank is a guy like I think a lot of World War II veterans who fought for their country, won a huge war, and came home to a lot of praise and well-wishing, certainly, but ends up an uneducated person working in a factory for blue-collar wages, a life that, frankly, Frank thought he was better than. Frank thought he deserved more than the life that he had gotten. And then, he's married to an alcoholic woman. They have 3 children. They can barely afford these children. So Frank is a guy who's grasping for what can save me, what can save my family. And the answer to that is the older brother, Danny, who is a star baseball player, expected to get a professional contract. The family is going to live off of Danny's fame until Danny gets his draft notice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, what a shocking time for young men back then when you think about it. Sitting in your lounge room with your family. And they didn't they used to sort of like televise the draft, or did you just get a letter?
No, they definitely televised the draft.
Right.
So in the early days, you just got a letter from your local draft board. When it came in the mail, you had to go. But then there were so many protests about who are these kids who are having to go fight, because they were mostly lower middle class kids who were getting drafted. Upper class kids who had money found other ways to get around it.
Yep.
So they instituted a draft lottery based upon birth dates. And so they would have this show, Paul, where these Defense Department people, very robotic in their black suits, would get up there with this big bowl, like you see drawing balls for a lottery. And it was exactly the same thing. And they draw a ball and go, September 4th, you've just been drafted. June the 17th, you've just been drafted.
Yeah, I mean,
it was horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, but in real life.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's when you think about it, it's incredible what human beings have done to other human beings, in our history. It's just incredible, and it never ceases to shock me.
Well, the problem on Earth certainly is human beings.
So the secrets in Eddie's family, they shape nearly every decision he makes. How do you go about revealing those truths without giving too much away too early?
It's a matter of two things, really. One is Eddie actually has his first sort of girlfriend. So Eddie connects up with a girl in his class who is sort of shunned by everybody else. She's different. She's even poorer than everybody else in the class, for one thing, and dresses differently, and so forth. But he becomes very interested in her. She's very intellectual, piques his curiosity. She knows things that Eddie doesn't know, which intrigues him. And so they connect up, and she's really kind of the catalyst for, let's figure this out. What do you really know over there? Let's go look in cemeteries and see who your forebears were. Let's go through church records. When Eddie's grandmother passes away, I was thinking about whether to reveal that or not. She was actually the person closest to him. And they go through all of her things, and they find a lot of evidence that the environment in which Eddie grew up was basically untrue. That the family's origins and things that had happened in the family's history were revelations that he had never heard and would never hear actually from his parents.
Mm.
So there's a little bit of a mystery story that goes on under the covers as well.
Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't delve too deep into that. It might spoil it for other people.
In 1843, a young girl is torn from the world she knew and brought deep into the harsh reality of Louisiana's plantation life. At Fox Creek, Monette grows up between lines she did not draw. Lines that decide who belongs, who serves, and who survives. Childhood slips away. Silence becomes protection. And every day, the weight of the place presses harder. Cyrus, the boy taken with her, grows into the steady presence in the fields, the one who watches over her when no one else will. But danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands at a distance, just watching. When the planter's son begins to notice her, out gathering wood, in quiet corners, in passing glances, the ground beneath her feet shifts.
So it's quite emotional, this story. And part of Eddie's journey was drawn from your own experiences growing up. Without sort of like giving any spoilers away, can you give us a little bit of insight into that? I mean, you mentioned before that you tried to remember, how when you were Eddie's age. Can you give us some sort of things from your childhood or from your adolescence that directly inspired you to give part of Eddie's character?
So I was much older by the time it happened, but when Ancestry.com came along, I actually submitted my DNA and began to find out things about my own history that were different from anything I had ever heard before. And I tried to imagine how that would feel. I was an adult at the time, but how would that feel if you were a child, if you were trusting everything that you were told by all of the adults in your life, and then you learned, oh my gosh, I'm not what I thought I was. They're not what I thought they were. So I tried to sort of backfill it a little bit that way. But as I was going to college, as I mentioned earlier, Paul, I mean, there was nothing more on our minds than who was going to get drafted, who would survive, how are you going to avoid the draft. So it was really, really easy for me to conjure up those feelings again and implant them in a 15-year-old brain.
Yeah. Did you, obviously, parts of that, it sounds like it would have been very emotional for you, sort of like writing about it again.
Yes. Yeah. It was by half cathartic and by half daunting and emotional.
Yeah. So the novel, one of the strongest themes of this thing about right versus wrong. What do you hope readers will walk away with? Will they question it? What sort of sentiment will they walk away with, or after they close that last page? Or what type of sentiment would you like them to walk away with after closing the last page?
I think two things. There are times when it is right to be defiant, but we have to realize that every defiance carries a cost, and you have to be prepared to pay the cost of your defiance. But it's important to be defiant. I think growing up in the 60s, that may have been the core lesson that we all learned, during the anti-war protests and the racial protests and riots and so forth. We grew up in an environment where we were taught, if you want things to be different, you have to be defiant. You have to make things change, because the status quo is so powerful. The people who enjoy the benefits of the status quo are not going to change just because you say, oh, by the way, this isn't fair. You literally have to be defiant. And I think Eddie learns that there's a balance. You have to weigh consequences, but it's important to be defiant. It's important to speak your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously there's with some of the things that we've discussed, there's a lot of sort of like moral conflict in the novel. So how conscious of you when you're writing to ensure that your pacing of the novel deals with it properly? So in other words, some authors start typing and sort of like flying through the story really, really quickly, and some authors would spend pages and pages delivering a very in-depth view of those moral conflicts. Which one are you?
Maybe neither one. I think
That's a good answer, by the way.
every novel I write starts with a theme of some sort. But you have to be really, really careful, Paul, that you're not preachy. People don't pick up a novel that they expect to be entertaining and think of it as something that was handed to them by their church pastor. You can't be preachy. But I also believe that actions speak louder than words. I heard that from my parents. So I tend not to have the characters get very preachy either. I did this because it's the right thing to do kind of thing. I don't do a lot of that. What I show is, they might have a choice and they make a choice. And their actions tell you more about what they were thinking in a way that's easier to digest than reading page after page of moral philosophy.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so this is your second book with that tells a story about the Kovacs family. Is there going to be a third?
Very possibly. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's a sequel where Eddie is a grown-up. He's a detective who is asked to go undercover into a condo complex on Tybee Island, Georgia, where the DEA believes people are dying of opioid overdoses. And he runs into more moral conflicts because that's not why these people are dying. And that story ends in a fairly upbeat fashion. He meets a resident that he falls in love with. So what happens next? Do they just live happily ever after, or is there more to tell about the ways in which Eddie can run into moral conflict?
Yeah.
Outback Odyssey is a compelling tale of adventure, discovery, and resilience set against the rugged backdrop of 1950s Australia. A young man from Yorkshire seizes the opportunity to emigrate under the Big Brother movement scheme and finds himself thrust into a world far removed from the life he knew. Arriving at a remote sheep station, he works alongside seasoned Aboriginal stockmen who teach him the unforgiving ways of the outback. By reading between the lines, Outback Odyssey becomes a timeless exploration of the human experience, resonating deeply with the ongoing conversation about Indigenous recognition and the pursuit of a truly inclusive national identity.
So this is probably my favorite part of the interview, and what I'm going to do is they're called quick fire questions. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question, and the first thing that comes into your mind, that's the answer. Okay. So I don't want you to think about it too much. Okay. Okay. Favorite book as a teenager?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Really? That's a pretty heavy book. Anyway, I'll go on. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
The character you'd most like to sit down with from your own novels?
The cast of the sequel to A Tissue of Lies, the cast of The Two Lives of Eddie Kovacs. Interesting group of people.
No, it can only be one person.
Oh.
Or one character.
Madeline.
Okay. One word that describes Eddie.
Feisty.
One word that best describes Frank.
Disillusioned.
A place that instantly sparks creativity for you.
The reason I laugh, so Tissue of Lies is my fifth novel. The first two I wrote while I was still working. Airplanes, hotel rooms. I read a story once that Stephen King wrote his early novels by standing in front of his clothes washer because it was the only flat, bare surface in his entire house. So happens to me everywhere, Paul.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. A line from the book you're most proud of.
The book I'm most proud of, or the line I'm most proud
The
of?
line.
Oh, wow.
That's a big one, I know.
In the novel Parker's Choice, Parker's lawyer says to him, they're talking about moral ambiguity. His lawyer says to him, morality is the position you have on abortion before your 16-year-old daughter gets pregnant.
Right. Okay. Most challenging scene to write, without spoilers, of course.
Probably the scene where in A Tissue of Lies, Eddie discovers his older brother Danny's secret.
Okay. We'll leave that one alone. One writer who shaped your storytelling.
Dennis Lehane.
What's the first thing you'll do after this interview?
I'm going to have a beer. It's 5:30 in Atlanta.
Yeah, I might join you. No, it's too early. It's only 9:30. So, Mike, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really wish you the best of luck with Tissue of Lies. It sounds absolutely intriguing, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you, Paul. I can tell you, this was the best interview I have ever done. You're very entertaining. I enjoyed this a lot, and you got to all of the important points. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Okay.